Throughout its lifespan, Dota 2 has been the king of esports prize pools by a long shot. We all remember TI10 with its insane 40 million prize pool. An amount so huge, it's still jaw-dropping today.
Title and taking on $18 million in Zania.
But here's a question for you. What do you think the total cumulative winnings of this game amount to? I'm trusting esport charts here because, let's be honest, I'm not calculating that myself. And the crazy part, the second highest game in total prize pools has barely half that amount. This model of absurd prize pool money was the vision Valve had for Dota from the start.
Tournaments back then were like really low prizes and a lot of prize money didn't even get to the players. There's been a lot of scams with managers and stuff like that. There were like some rumors that gonna be like $50,000 first place and everyone was going like, nah, it's not gonna be like that.
Back in TI1, the 1 million prize pool was so wild that some Chinese teams allegedly didn't participate because they thought it was fake. TI1 was a massive success. I remember watching it from my college campus. It was the first live stream I ever saw. Dota grew rapidly after that into the juggernaut we know today. But now we have to ask, is the current model sustainable? When people say Dota is dying, they often point to the concurrent player graph, reminiscing about the good old days when the player base was supposedly higher. But here's the truth. If we compare the numbers from TI10 to today, the player base is actually larger now. Sure, it's not a massive increase, but over 4 years, a significant chunk of the game's lifespan, that's a win in my book. The real problem isn't player numbers, it's viewership saturation. Dota was never the most watched esports, even when it was dominating prize pools. Take TI10 for example, our largest concurrent viewership ever. It only ranks 6th overall in peak viewers, behind games like Free Fire and Mobile Legends Bang Bang, whatever that is. It actually looks better than I thought it would. While we could argue that Chinese viewership data wasn't included and there are claims of rampant view botting in that region, let's face it, viewership was never our priority. Dota's appeal has always been about passion. It wasn't built for accessibility or casual fun. Tutorials? Forget it. Fun? It's not really what Reddit cares about. This game thrived on the collective energy of its players, fans, and the compendiums that grew year after year. But compendiums are no more. Now the DPC is also gone, and with it, entire regions have fallen off the competitive map. North America, dead. China, Southeast Asia, and South America, arguably dead. And sure, Europe's thriving, but a consequence of not having half of the world play the game is lower overall viewership. And more critically, viewer saturation. And what is viewer saturation? After the death of the DPC, tournaments became a weekly event. In 2019, if OG and EG were playing the group stage of a random tournament, it wasn't unusual to pull 70 to 90,000 viewers. These weren't even playoffs, just a regular game. Now, you can have Falcons versus Liquid in the semifinals of a tournament and it might barely scrape 20,000 viewers. Why the drop? Well, the DPC made some games feel pointless.
You have to be ready once a week, which is kind of like an illusion that it's not just one day a week. You need to get ready like a few days before and you need to always stay ready. You can argue that you have to watch every game, you have to constantly watch the meta develop. It's asking for so many more days, so many more hours than it was previous years. And for people like Poppy, Kuro, me, somebody who's been doing this for 10 years in Dota 2, it's too stressful. It's too much.
I'm not here to tell you No-Tail doesn't have a point, but it's ironic to hear No-Tail being against the DPC for the same reasons I think the current format will pretty much grind every pro player to dust this year. This is how a Tier 1 team's calendar looked like in 2021, the year No-Tail was talking about. Secret played 7 tournaments in 2021. Out of those 7, 2 were DPC, which they could play from their homes, so technically 5 in-person events. Falcons in 2024 played 14 tournaments that forced them to leave their houses. And well, if you're not aware, we already have 18 big tournaments confirmed for 2025. You could be thinking that all of this is great, but remember, viewership saturation. I'm not here trying to say that pro players should have it easy and they shouldn't play too many games. I'm saying that the production and perceived value of anything is based on scarcity. And when you have this much Dota happening, it just feels less special. It's really hard to get viewership data from tournaments without paying like $500 to esports charts. But take this from someone that cast 34 tournaments last year. I know what I'm talking about. Average viewership is already at a record low, and I'm not sure how increasing how many tournaments there are in a year will make things better. Going back to 4 regions being pretty much dead, it means that we get to see the same teams playing over and over again, with some exceptions, mostly all of them coming from Europe. And guess what? It's hard to make a Peruvian or a Chinese viewer excited for Eastern European carry number 5 that got to 16k MMR. Not only that, but in an attempt to make tournaments profitable, which is totally fair, tournaments now aren't the same they used to be. Lots of them nowadays are pseudo-lands where teams travel to Europe, bootcamp there, and play from their own base, which means less interviews, less content, less interaction, less drama.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
That was not on camera, but that did.
Okay.
For play-by-play that I missed, it was Envy emptying a monster bottle on Hani's head. Probably for queuing him on sea servers. But he's laughing about it, so...
I guess I deserved it.
And all of that, alongside good games, was what made great tournaments. If this wasn't enough, now tournaments are way longer than they used to be. Take Elite League Season 1, for instance, a tournament with 24 teams, great representation from the whole world, but a glorified online event nonetheless, that despite the $1 million prize pool, paled against something like the Anim Major. Not only the Anim Major had 3x the amount of hours watched, it was also 25% shorter. 2 new tournament organizers, but the Anim Major had great production value. It had personality, intention. It's very hard, if not impossible, to have great events like that when the same tournament organizer is pumping 4 or even 5 of those a year. And don't get me wrong, I know the Anim Major ain't cheap. I'm talking about Seoul here. BTS was way lower on the production value side, but it was also an incredible watch. So how viable is Dota as a business when we keep increasing tournament numbers, duration, while arguably decreasing what made it what it is? Soul, passion, uniqueness, and scarcity. And then you just have to ask yourself, how viable are these tournaments when matches that used to pull 70,000 viewers now get 30? And there are more issues. There's lack of new talent. Take Parker, one of the most controversial figures in Dota since Pure. He got his start in the DPC. I remember casting his first game there, where he lost miserably.
How is a troll this farmed in comparison to a Wraith King? He's got Bloodlust, sure, but he can't be this. There can't be this big of a difference, especially with how much space your Ember was making for you.
Alright, doubling up. I thought that was the big thing, like when Bowie was here.
It was such a bad game, some people would argue that Valve shouldn't even fund something that was that bad. But that funding kept him in the game. At least I'm sure it helped. Then we have the top-heavy system. You didn't qualify for a tournament? Well, good luck surviving on the scraps from online events where you might win $5,000 split 6 ways after 2 weeks of grinding. When you get paid, if you get paid. Look, I understand if you disagree with me, if you think I'm a hater, but assume that everything I said here is wrong. That in fact, it should be more top-heavy and we should have even more events.
I mean, you say that, but I was like also looking at, you know, there's the Ramses 5 Anim Major winner, and I was looking at the tournaments he won, and back then it was like a $500,000 for each tournament, you know, like it was actually 50% cut. So even now, like the tournaments we won are not even like $500,000 because like the cuts are way like lower, because nowadays people think every team deserves to get some cut that goes to their tournament.
You don't think that?
No, I 100% don't think that.
If we exaggerate what Skater is saying, then tournaments should only give money to the top 4. We should have even more tournaments. And then what? Orgs go bankrupt because they make no money. The entire Dota ecosystem becomes 8 teams. I'm pretty sure that's not what the viewers want, what you want. Remember what I said in the beginning? Viewership was never our priority, but guess what? That's the most important thing in this business. Look, Skater is the best of the best, his profession doesn't have longevity. I understand where he's coming from. I also understand if you think making money in Dota should be hard. But if your point is that only the best should compete, and if making it in Dota is so tough that generational talent like Parker doesn't show up anymore, are we having the best version of Dota possible? Who will follow the current generation steps once they're gone? I just love this freaking game and I want to see it thrive more. Something that in my opinion is a bit hard to happen right now. We saw what happened with the DPC, and there's plenty of criticism that can be directed towards it. But remember, Maureen is a DPC child. Pure is a DPC child. The entirety of Gaming Gladiators, Parker, ATF, lots of players had their first break in the DPC and used that as a stepping stone to greatness. Furthermore, the DPC being flawed doesn't mean that absolute chaos tournaments every day is the solution either. If players were already complaining about having no breaks, how do we expect them to perform at their highest level if there's no rest? And how do we actually get excited for Liquid versus Gaming Gladiators for the 8th time in a year? The current system rewards the best today without really thinking of the best tomorrow. But more important than the players are the viewers. The entire ecosystem exists because people watch it. More viewers means more ad revenue, more sponsors, more passion. With no viewers, there is no competitive scene, and we might be squeezing everyone a bit too hard right now. And look, it's easy to shit-talk people on the internet without showing your face, which is why, unlike most of my videos, I decided to be here in person for you guys. And don't get me wrong, I'm not calling out TO specifically. In fact, I have the deepest respect for every single TO in the scene. And I'm ready to work. I have a great passport, by the way, great sense of humor. I have worked CS and Dota lands. The amount of work, sweat, and tears that goes behind the scenes is crazy. TOs in the scene are just business trying to make money. If there's someone to be called out here, is probably Valve, and I say that with peace and love. I think they actually did a really good job with the DPC. They accomplished a lot in my opinion, but they decided to give TOs free reign, and I think that's a bit much. Some control would be good for everyone. But, you know, enough of complaining. If you want suggestions, I have a couple. First suggestion, have qualifiers pay some money. Take part of the money from the prize pool. Who benefits from these $1 million prize pools anyways? We have twice as much as Counter-Strike, and honestly, who the fuck cares? We don't get more viewers because of it, there's no sponsorships, no one started playing Dota because of a $1 million tournament in decades. Let's be honest, no one started playing Dota in a while. Just to expand on this, I think all TOs and Valve should gather in a room and agree on cutting prize pools in like 30%. Give 15 to the qualifiers, so now you have some semblance of sustainability, and the other 15 should just be reinvested back into the tournaments. And second, I think for TOs, it would be nice to try and be different. There are tons of tournaments that try really hard, and I can see it. I can see when a TO really cares about what they're doing, and Dota thankfully has a lot of those. But when you have 4 or 5 lands in a year, it is hard to be different and stay in budget. I get it. Finally, I think Valve should have some control over how the tournaments are planned. I understand that it is tough for them. I understand that they don't have that many people working in the game anymore, but I think it would greatly benefit everyone. That's enough for today. I don't want to pretend I know anything but my love for this game. The thing is, even if competitive Dota dies, the game as it stands might still flourish. Whether you like it or not, Valve doesn't have any stake in the competitive scene anymore. So for better or worse, the success of Dota as a business is not tied to the quality of the game, which actually gives me hope for what Dota will be in the future. But still, it's hard to dissociate the game to the sweaty, try-hardy, passionate competition it can be. And as worried as I am, all I can do is be hopeful for the future. Happy holidays, guys.